Question number 3, the Honourable David Cunliffe.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. To the Prime Minister, does he stand by his statement that his plan to sell public assets would give, quote, New Zealanders a fantastic opportunity to invest in this country's future, close
The Honourable
quote?
Bill English on behalf of the Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, on behalf of the Prime Minister, yes, the mixed ownership model introduced by the previous Labor government for Air New Zealand is one example of the opportunity many New Zealanders have taken. There are now many thousands of New Zealand investors who lost money in collapsed finance companies telling us they want better investment options.
The Honourable David Cunliffe.
Mr Speaker, to the Prime Minister, in that case, is he aware that his budget supplement to the investment statement says the Crown would forego only $200 million in dividends per year by selling $6.8 billion worth of assets, which works out to a dividend return of 3% per year, less than you can get in the bank? Or does he think that the real foregone dividends would be larger than those described in the budget?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, as we've discussed in this House, if you look at the dividend flow that came from the SOEs under the previous government, when you exclude the special dividends mostly paid by Meridian, those flows were less than $100 million per year for Mighty River, Solid Energy and Genesis, and averaged, and then when you add Meridian special dividends, that puts the number on average up to about $300 million a year. So, as Treasury says in the budget documents, the mixed ownership model is likely to be about fiscally neutral for the government.
The Honourable David
Mr
Cunliffe.
Speaker, does the Prime Minister realise that if we take him at his word and impute dividend flows of only $100 million a year, that he's making that return to shareholders problem worse, and it would only in fact be about 1.5%? And if that case, is he not relying on things like future electricity price increases to bring those assets up to something close to the $6.8 billion sale price he has forecast?
The Honourable Bill English.
No, Mr Speaker, what the government has been doing is working hard to improve the governance and performance of the SOEs. Actually, the big question here is whether Labor will go into the election promising to buy them back.
Order. No, what Labor might promise is not actually the responsibility of the Prime Minister. The Honourable David Cunliffe.
In light of that answer, has he read the budget documents which state, and I quote, "There's little evidence to suggest that privatisation would significantly improve the financial performance of many of the SOE companies, and that, quote, significant participation by foreign investors would be essential to achieve the government's objectives." And if he has read those, can he confirm what those objectives are and why foreign ownership is essential to achieve them?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, I presume the member is quoting from Treasury, and in both cases we disagree with their views, which I think is a very healthy thing. The government's objectives are better performance for the companies, better investment opportunities for New Zealand, and reduction in our need to borrow billions of dollars in volatile overseas financial markets. We would rather pay dividends to New Zealanders than interest to foreign lenders. Clearly, he would prefer to do the opposite.
Point of order, Mr Speaker.
Point of order, the Honourable David
I
Cunliffe.
seek leave to table the Minister's executive summary where he signs off on the policies he's now reneging on.
Order. The member knows that we don't seek leave to table budget documents. John Biscow, supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Supplementary to the Prime Minister. What is the point of the government owning Landcorp as a public asset?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, it's not it doesn't yield a strong flow of dividends, that's for sure. I think the return on assets for Landcorp is about 1%. But it does mean that it's the government's continued ownership means it has a greater ability to deal with Treaty of Waitangi claims and various other complications around contested ownership of coastal land, reserve land and potential treaty settlement land.
John Biscow.
Does he agree that New Zealanders would have an even more fantastic opportunity to invest in the country's future if the government simply sold SOEs outright? If not, why not?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, we think that, as you would expect from a considered and balanced government, that the mixed ownership model represents a good balance between better opportunities for New Zealanders to invest than the $8.5 billion that they lost in finance companies over the last 4 or 5 years on the one hand, but a sense of security on the part of New Zealanders that the government still has majority ownership.
Question number 4, Kanwaljit Singh Bakshi.